everyone. It's Lisa Starr back with another episode of StarCast, the podcast for wellness warriors. Thanks for joining us. We are talking today to a very unique business owner. He is a founder and owner of two businesses that have to do with operating your yoga business in a more efficient, profitable, and fulfilling way. The Ethical Coach and the Yogapreneur Collective. And he's a high demand guy. It took me weeks to find a date when he could speak with us. But we're going to talk today about what it takes to have a successful yoga business. So welcome to Josh Biro, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Lisa. Excited to jump on and chat today.
So Josh, I guess you and I met from Mind Body University, right? We're both in that Mind Body Consulting. And I was intrigued by you because you are like so switched on when it comes to numbers and facts and business and data. I said, this guy really has it going on. And you don't see that often in wellness consulting, let alone in yoga consulting. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your backstory, Josh. How did you come to be in this position and starting these businesses? What was your wellness journey like?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I'm blushing, so thank you very much for the compliment.
You're welcome.
You know, the quick backstory is I grew up in a yoga family a little bit. So my dad and mom were both into yoga, especially my dad. I started when I was maybe 13 years old. I grew up in Canada, so I was a stiff hockey playing dude. So despite going to yoga classes, I always thought it was weird. I was usually one of the only two men in the class, the other being my dad.
It's funny that your dad was the person, not your mom.
And we did Ashtanga yoga at the time. So he was always wearing like really small, too tight shorts. It was like super embarrassing for me. But then fast forward some years later, I was broken and really extra stiff from hockey. My wife got me back into yoga. So did the yoga training thing. And then ultimately we ended up managing a couple studios, building a couple studios with friends, and then having our own studio in Canada.
All right, whereabouts in Canada were you?
That was in Red Deer, Alberta.
Okay.
When we were opening the studio, despite our experience teaching, despite our experience managing, despite my experience even helping build a couple studios prior to, the game plan was get a bank to give us some money, open the doors, sleep in the yoga room if we have to, live off of prana and kombucha, and we'll be happy. Like that was the end of the game plan. Like just open and we'll teach all the classes.
What year was that, Josh?
That was 2009-ish, 10, somewhere in there.
So you were young and idealistic and...
Yeah, I would say I wasn't oblivious. I had owned previous businesses. I had a cleaning company before. I had worked as a logistics manager for a marine science center. I owned a scuba business. So like I had it wasn't my first rodeo, so to speak, but the purpose behind the business was to teach people yoga classes and to have a lifestyle that we wanted. Then our son was on the way. So yeah, long story short, it took probably a month after we opened, and it was hard to build. It was hard to get the money. It was hard to get open. We did it, and it took about a month for us to realize if we don't figure out this business thing, this is going to be a problem, one, for us, but two, we're really not going to be able to accomplish what we're setting out to accomplish, which is to help people. So for the next, 3 years straight, I devoted 100% of my energy into figuring out the business side of running yoga studios.
What was your step to do that? What did you mean? You already knew something. Like, what did you say? Okay, I'm going to learn how to do this better.
It sounds very yogi to say this, but step one was awareness. So I think what I experience even now coaching in a lot of the wellness world is wellnesspreneurs are passionpreneurs, and they're very product centric, which is positive. But it almost makes them a little bit oblivious to the other business things, or they have dissociated their business from the product. So in a yoga studio, for example, we think, well, the yoga is so good that that's why people are going to come in and practice and they'll pay for something. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah, well, we have the same thing on the spa side, by the way. Someone that's a great esthetician or massage therapist decides to open a business without really thinking about the balance sheet and the gift card liabilities and inventory costs, because that's not fun. Who wants to think about that?
Right. And so the awareness part was just, okay, this business, like if everything is yoga, yoga is business. How is business not yoga? So that was step one. But then more practically speaking, it was just starting to pay attention to what is actually happening in the business. So how do we measure what's taking place? What are those measurements telling us? What are benchmarks for the industry? At the time, there were barely any benchmarks. It was hard to even know what was going
Right.
on.
Well, what should you be selling per square foot, and what your profit margin should be, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was the focus. We doubled the business after going down that path and maintained a 20% annual growth for a decade. Ultimately, we sold the studio, and after selling, we actually sold everything. So we sold our house, sold our cars, whatever, and we moved into an overland RV and did like the van life thing for a couple of years as a family.
With a baby.
Two of them.
Two of them. Okay.
And we make the joke now that like we were van lifers before it was cool. Like now it's common. It was a common stage, but at the time people were like, "What? Like what's wrong with you? Why are you moving into a van?"
Sounds like you're always ahead of the curve, Josh.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Accidentally, at least. But during that time, our experience shifted from, I had already been hired to train some sales teams in some yoga studios. But then we were driving around. We did Canada, United States, Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, back up, back down for 2 years full time. And we were traveling from studio to studio, wellness place to wellness place. And as ex-owners who had run a very profitable business, had a good lifestyle, and had sold profitably as well, that automatically guaranteed that we would go somewhere and we'd end up talking with the owner and they'd be like, "Can I take you for coffee? Let's talk about business stuff." And that's what set me on the path full time for coaching.
So your reputation preceded you into the towns you were visiting.
Yeah. And it wasn't unintentional, obviously, but it sort of did organically grow and become a thing, because the one thing that became very apparent was we had a really positive experience running a wellness business, had made a lot of money, had what we call like an ethically affluent lifestyle, family, house, all the stuff. And then we were going to places and experiencing people who were like really great people, had a really great product, and their business was really struggling. And their impact was just diminished as a result. So that's where we could help, basically.
I know. It's so, as a consultant, you feel so badly when you see people that do have a great product, but they went in undercapitalized, or they just didn't set some things up right, and they're kind of doomed to failure without fixing them, but they don't always know how to fix them.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way I look at small business in Western culture, at least, is small businesses are the core drivers of social transformation. Small businesses are how you take something that's kind of revolutionary and bring it to the mainstream. You popularize it. So it's a vehicle of change. When we talk about wellness businesses, especially, they're impact vehicles. The example being, use massage therapists, because we brought it up earlier. You could be the greatest massage therapist on the planet. Like, I don't know how we judge that, but for the sake of talking. But if your business operationally doesn't make sense and it's hard for people to do business with you, or if you don't have any marketing, or if you can't figure out cash flow, no one will experience it. So,
right. And what's the point then? So you're great, but no one knows and you don't make money anyway. I don't know. I think sometimes in these wellness businesses, Josh, see what you say. I think that the practitioners come in from that passion place, as you said. They love what they do and they can do it better. They don't like to talk about money or profit. Sometimes they feel like it's like a bad word. We can't talk about the money.
Yep.
But that doesn't serve you well as a business owner. And when I'm consulting, I talk to them about the fact that they're employing people. And if they can't stay open by being profitable, those people won't have jobs. And you have to look at the practical side of it as well.
Absolutely. It can be very pragmatic. I think I agree that the wellness businesses that we work with, it's the same thing. It's very, again, product centric, like very passionate about the products and what it can do. But one thing that I think happens is what we call the curse of knowledge. So which is as soon as you really know something, you immediately forget what it was like when you didn't know it.
Right. Well put.
So if you understand how valuable even whatever your nail salon is, right? Like it doesn't matter what the product is. Once you understand how valuable it is, the thing that you're offering, you forget what it's like to be the person who doesn't get that. So you make an assumption then as the owner of the business that just the fact that you exist and you do a good job by your opinion standards, people are going to come in and your business is going to thrive. And that's not how that works. There's just more to it than that. Not that the product quality doesn't matter.
Oh, and it does, of course. But all the other things have to be there too. I always say, look, it's like you go to a restaurant and they have really awesome food, but the waiters are rude or the maitre d' doesn't seat you well, or you don't like the music or the seats are uncomfortable. And so the things around the delivery of that meal aren't as good. And you're not necessarily going to come back just for the food when the other parts weren't working. I mean, especially when you're a consumer who's dealing with discretionary income and it's an option to use these businesses. It's not a must.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you do then? I mean, you're in these towns meeting with owners who have all I'm sure, varying degrees of proficiency at what they're doing or issues to face. And how do you begin down that path of getting them to understand how it should run? Like, what's your secret sauce?
Nothing too secret, I would say, actually. Sometimes, throughout the years, we've developed sort of a signature program that we run with yoga studios and wellness businesses. Ethical Coach is we're coaching coaches on how to be a coach, because that's a different skill set as well. But step one in both cases goes back to this awareness thought where you have to make a decision about what you're trying to do. So that's the first conversation is we look at why did you open your business? Like what's your personal core driver behind this? And what are you trying to achieve? If you're like me, I was trying to open up and teach yoga classes. And the transition that I went through was, oh, wait, that's the starting line. Like that's just opening the business. So like, what does this look like in 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What am I trying to achieve? How do I operate? How does it feel? What impact am I trying to make? So we're looking at that. And then we go to the other end of the spectrum and say, where are we now? And that's where KPI reporting, getting, a deeper audit of what's happening in the business, that hyper awareness of what truthfully, objectively is taking place. And that's the gap. As soon as you can identify what that is, then you can start to do something about it.
Do you have issues, Josh, with owners who don't see where they are, who can't accept where you might assess that they are in this curve of success?
Yeah, that has happened. The interesting part about being an entrepreneur, and I'll maybe comment on small business owner versus entrepreneur in a moment, is it is a guaranteed pathway for you to have to grow as a person. Like, in my opinion, an entrepreneurial endeavor is a very spiritual endeavor. It's a very personal growth oriented endeavor, because you cannot own a small business and have an entrepreneurial mindset and not have to deal with your shit. Like, it's going to be emotionally triggering. You're going to be challenged in ways you never thought. You're going to have to do things you don't like. It's not to say that it's going to be negative necessarily, but those challenges will be there. Part of that, from the coaching perspective, is it is not totally uncommon for us to encounter a client where we would assess the situation, just give them our honest truth about what we see and what the numbers are showing, and they come up with an argument against what we found, or often they just start describing why it's like that,
they get
excuses
defensive,
for it.
Right.
And they're defensive about it. To which we have to just help put their mind at ease. Like, hey, we're on your team, sort of thing. There's nothing to be defensive about for me. I'm just telling you what we see, and this can sting, but now we can do something about it. Really specific example for the listeners would be first visit return. Doesn't matter what wellness business we're talking about. To me, this is such a powerful metric to know and to really be aware of. Because in 2020, almost 5 now, if I get my butt off my couch and find you online and book whatever it is and drive across town and find a parking spot and arrive on time for the appointment or whatever else, like that's a huge action. I did not get there by accident.
Absolutely.
So if I do that, regardless of what I purchase, and then after I leave, I never come back again,
What a waste.
that doesn't make sense. Like that's not logical, right? So that's where the opportunity lies, is in the experience offered so that doesn't happen.
And so you're training them to track that, right? And know what that number is and then improve it in some way.
Exactly. So suppose in a yoga studio across the board, yoga studios see on average 50% loss on day one.
Really, 50% of the new clients never come back.
Yep,
So-
until they do something about it. Yes, it's a
Is
lot.
that because they were just trying you? Like, do we know how many of those were yogis or first timers? Like, I'd love to hear if you have any more data on why that happens.
Yeah, it's first timers that were not necessarily first time to yoga, first timers to that studio that we're talking
Right.
about.
Mm-hmm.
We have some anecdotal data on when we look at specific case studies with studios around, okay, when someone comes in, are they answering on the form whether they've done yoga before or not, et cetera?
Mhm.
What we're seeing is it's less likely now that we're getting a pure first timer. Most people have tried it before at this point, versus when I opened my studio or the first studio I was managing
15 years
back in
ago, right.
2005, like everyone, it was brand new kind of thing. So people are coming in with more experience. I would interpret that comparatively to suggest that people are not coming in just to try it out. Like no one, going back to the same thing, if I get to the studio, I'm not coming in just to be like, I guess I'll try some stretching postures and see if I like it.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming in and what they're saying just by showing up is I'm looking for a yoga experience and I'm here trying to experience something. I'm assuming you can give it to me. It says yoga studio over the door. So if I don't come back, that experience isn't just the class that we did. It's not just the postures or whatever. It's like there's a lot more going on. It's what I was sold, how I was greeted.
Right. Like the restaurant analogy I gave you, there are a lot of other pieces
Exactly.
around it. The music, does I'm not a fan of when the instructor just stays on the mat and shows us what to do. I like it when they walk around. I love it when they make adjustments, which of course stopped in COVID, but it's starting to come back now. I mean, that's why I'm live. I can do the other thing in my bedroom on the Peloton or something app. If I'm in the studio with you, please, help me.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Why, if I can just do it in my living room for free on YouTube, why am I coming to you?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of thing.
Right. And so you say like that whole experience. I mean, how much do you think it is important in the studio, Josh, about the way it looks, about the music? Does it smell good? Are those things important to a yoga client?
Yes. I think for any business, they are important. That being said, I don't think that you can say there's one way that it should be.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give an example. I played hockey growing up, and my favorite gym was this beat up, dingy place in this basement with like one window and one bathroom. It's kind of stinky.
Mm-hmm.
But to go work out, like between practices, environmentally and who was there and the type of experience that it was, and they had specific equipment that I wanted to use, like that's where I wanted to be. There was another gym in town that was new that had like the big, beautiful view and a juice bar, and it was like super nice. The price difference between them was pretty insignificant, actually, despite the other one being much nicer. But it wasn't the vibe that I was looking for at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that what you see, what you hear, what you smell, all of that stuff absolutely matters. But what I don't think is true is to say like a yoga studio should look like fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more of a decision that you make as an owner that you have to really take ownership over. Like, what is your style? What is your vibe? How do you want people to feel when they come in, and curate all of that towards that?
There are certainly plenty of places we can both name that have bamboo floors and natural light and all the right touches that are, you assume a yoga person would be interested in. But there are also some things that I think can be almost boring or predictable in that format, as you say. And the music to me is very important. I am a regular yoga practitioner for almost 20 years, I'd say. And when I go to a class where the instructor has curated a playlist that matches what we're doing, but it's not just all blah, da, 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 da music. There's some interesting music in there. I mean, that's really impactful for me. I had an instructor somewhere that would share them on Spotify, her playlist for the class, and I still listen to them. So, that definitely brings people back, because let's talk about this, Josh. We're doing Downward Dog in 100 places. Like, what makes one better than another? I mean, when at the end of the day, you're doing sequencing, and there is a lot to be said for the teacher, don't get me wrong, but, there has to be more to it, to your point, that drives the repeat visit.
Right. And if we look at in yoga, I hate to use the word traditional, because what does that mean? But traditional in Western culture yoga practices, all of them arrived without music. Music wasn't a thing. That's been added by us. So there are studios that's the experience they're offering, is like, we don't play music in our class. And the teacher has to occupy your mind that way. Is that better or worse?
Depends.
Couldn't tell you. But that's the experience that they're deciding to offer. I think about, there was a massage therapist that rented a space from a studio that we had, and she would put on not massage music. It was like, I don't know who was doing it, but someone was like sort of slowing down more kind of top 40 music. And it was a really interesting experience to get a massage from her because of that. Like, you didn't get into this like spa feeling massage. You got into this like, we're doing some work in here massage. And I really liked that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Totally different experience than the quintessential birds chirping, water running sound in the background of a massage.
Well, this is good food for thought to anyone listening who wants to open a studio. It's not a formula that you have to follow. I mean, you have to go with your brand and what supports that, and your colors and your experience. But it is good to hear that all of those bits are equally important. When you improve that return rate, what's your first step to doing that first visit return?
Yeah. So it ties into this experience that we're talking about, where you are curating an entire experience for someone. Realize that when they're first in your space, doesn't matter what your business is, the product alone is only maybe half of what they are experiencing. And if you go in your space every day, like, you don't even see it the same way anymore. So an example would be, stand out the front door of your building, take a deep breath and close your eyes, open the door, take 3 steps in, open your eyes and take a deep breath in. What immediately do you hear? Where do your eyes land right away? What do you smell? How would you describe it? So that's where the environment comes in. And what you might be looking for would be, if you were to walk into your space like that and then you leave and go sit in the car with your friend, and your friend says, "Hey, Lisa, what's it like in there?" What would you say?
Describe it for me.
Like, right. If it's just like, it's nice in there, that's generic and you're the same as everyone else. What's definitive? What's memorable? What's special about it?
That's really good. That's a really good point. You should be able to describe it that way.
Right. And then so by extension, same thing with the experience in terms of, who do I interact with? If I come in, am I greeted at the door? Do I have to come to the desk before I meet someone? How do they greet me? Like, what specifically do they say? How do I feel being part of the environment? Am I introduced to other people in the community, or is that a different vibe? What happens next? How easy is the flow for me to kind of get signed in and paid and et cetera? Or is that complex? Is there an awkwardness to it? Et cetera.
Looking at the smoothness, really, of that journey and the appeal to a person of that journey from the car into the space and onto your mat.
Right. Then the second component of that, I think, is introvert and extrovert aside, people want to be seen. So there are multiple ways to make someone feel seen. But if I'm on my first visit at a yoga studio, for example, it should be basically impossible that I can like come in, sign into class, go through class and leave and not feel like
not be spoken to, at least.
Not be spoken to, right? And like someone doesn't know me, I wasn't welcomed, they didn't check you up on me, like that's what you would want to avoid. So you can put little touch points in there to make sure that that takes place.
So do you have any guidelines you can give us, Josh, about if someone listening wants to start a yoga studio, ballpark, what's it cost to build one, create one, how long until it's profitable, anything like that, any nuggets you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. Yoga studios are interesting because it really depends on what type of studio you're going to build. So if you're just doing like a small desk, there's already a bathroom in the space that you're leasing and you're going to do the floor and then some props, couple tens of thousands, and you're good to go. Like you're started. So you can do it on the cheap. My last studio, and that was again, like, over 15 years ago, we spent $370,000 in the leasehold improvements. I know a couple $1 million build outs. So like that's the other end of the spectrum. You can go really big.
For places with multi studios in them or just one?
Not even necessarily. That comes down to, maybe you have multiple spaces, maybe you have different equipment, but it's probably more facilities. So if you're building out full bathroom facilities, because you're like, if you're a hot yoga studio,
you want a shower.
You're going to need showers, Simple things like there's a few studios out there that they've got a yoga room that can fit 70 people in it, but a lobby that can only fit 10.
I know, right?
Or a bathroom or like 2 bathrooms. So
yeah,
then
that's a bit of a misfit.
These bottlenecks. Right. So to do that properly, it's an investment thing. You've got to have a bit more. So that spectrum is big. And then in terms of profitability, yoga studios should cash flow after the first 3 months.
Really?
So you may not be out of debt. In my mind, it's not that you're going to necessarily be out of debt, but you should, if you've done things right in your opening, you should already have positive MRR, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in. That's not a hard rule. Yeah, it's pretty fast. That's not a hard rule, but that is what we see when you're operating a smart business. The idea of a yoga studio being like, you're 3 years in and you've been kind of like burning cash. That's absolutely not the case. So something's wrong if that's happening.
What's the typical labor percentage on the income statement? What is spent on labor typically?
What is spent is usually we see like 50%, 60%.
Really?
What we're trying to get it to is 30%.
Same in the spa world, yes. I didn't think it would be that high. I mean, you have one instructor for 30 attendees.
Yeah. There just aren't a lot of other hard expenses. Your top 2 expenses are going to be lease or mortgage payment if you're buying, and employees every time. And which one's higher depends on the market you're in.
Does that include the owner paying themselves?
Separate from the owner paying themselves.
Okay.
So we have what we call a healthy studio infographic, which is like breaks down the super macro, like what would the percentages be as a percentage of revenue. It's not a hard science because it depends on scale and the other factors, but generally, if you can get all your employees and contractors paid in about 30%, and then you're paying yourself around 20%, and the business profits right away 10%. There's a couple more categories, but that's a good target.
That's a good target indeed. I mean, to be cash flow positive in 3 months is pretty appealing, and you don't need that much equipment or a huge build out. You don't need it. I mean, it's a room and a desk, as you say, and a bathroom, and you can be good to go depending on the vibe that you want to create. So what do you think some of the bigger mistakes made from a new owner building out a studio that you've seen have been? Can you give us any examples?
Yeah, I will always, number one is what we've been talking about. It's like not taking the business side of it seriously. That actually reminds me, the transition that is maybe not anticipated by a studio owner is when you transition from being a student to then a teacher, your peer group changes. When you transition from being a teacher to an owner, your peer group changes again. Like you're not in the peer group with the teachers anymore. So that's one surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
when you're a small business owner, small business owners love what they do. They're passionate about the product. An entrepreneur learns to love what it takes.
Oh, I love that distinction.
Yeah, it's like the game of the business becomes the fun part. That's the transition that takes them time in the beginning. So that's like the mental part of it. The mistake that we see up front more often than not, I would say 8 or 9 out of 10 times, is not respecting sales. And in the yoga world especially, the word sales is like a forbidden word. Like we like to say it, inviting to the community or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Call whatever you want, but you got to sell someone something, and
Mm-hmm.
sales are active. And the reason why you should be cash rolling, you should have positive MRR, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in, is because you should be selling people to membership and building recurring income like before you even open. That's how that happens. So the big mistake we see is opening up and focusing on, like hyper focusing on the schedule, or like we got to get this rock star teacher from in town that everyone knows, or things like that. It's not that those things don't matter at all, but while you're focusing on that, what you're missing is we didn't hire a front desk person to sign the class in, or we did, and all they do is sit there and the person signs it on the iPad and goes in themselves.
Right. And they're scrolling their phone in the meantime and not even greeting the person.
And they didn't say a simple line like, hey, we have an intro,
Exactly. MRR, could you elaborate on that for listeners, how you measure that and what it is?
Yeah, monthly recurring income or monthly recurring revenue, that is MRR. Basically, when you're a membership-based business, you're probably going to focus on MRR up front. So if I'm paying $100 a month for a yoga membership and there's 100 of us, get 10,000 in MRR coming to the business. The reason that works is, and why it's so powerful, I think, especially for most service businesses actually in general, like a yoga studio, is that's how you start to build up this sort of compounding effect where you've got expenses and profit built into what's happening and you're building on top of it. If you don't do that, it means literally every month, whether you're going to pay the bills or not, depends on how many people you got to pay you.
Right.
And how many sales you're able to close. So it's a really different effort that you're putting in.
Is there a percentage of the visitors that are a member that you like to recommend your yoga clients to aspire to?
Yeah, you should have at least 70% on a recurring membership in a yoga studio. We're seeing nowadays that it's higher. It's usually our more successful studios tend to be in the 80, 85% range. Percentages don't tell the full story, because if you're not making enough money to cover the bills, even if you have 80% members, like that doesn't matter. It's still not enough. So that's the only caveat on that. But 70 to 80% is a good range to see.
Josh, how do you forecast how many members you could have? Right? You're a new studio owner and you've got one studio and it's 20 by 30. So what number do I shoot for? Is there a formula to compute that?
Yeah, there are a few different ways to make that calculation. It is speculative when you don't have members yet. You got to kind of see what's happening, right? So if you're opening a studio, I'd be looking at how many square feet do you have in your yoga room? Usually I would say we would divide that up by like 36 square feet per person.
Okay.
Which is big.
6 by 6, right?
Yeah, that's big, but that gives you your class capacity. And then your schedule. Ideally, you're optimizing your classes towards at least 70, 75% fill rate, like 80% of the time. So you can use that times the number of classes you're going to run in a week to start to get an idea of what you're shooting for in terms of bodies in the door.
And I guess you have to try different times to see when people want to come in your community.
Yes, I would say that's true. Asterisks, people trying it is the right way to look at it, that like you would have to test to know for sure. What doesn't work very well is asking people. And that might sound counterintuitive, but people lie, like people will tell you, oh yeah, I'd love it if you had a 2 p.m. class. And then they never come at 2 p.m. because it's a weird time. So in the beginning, I would calibrate your schedule towards how do people live in your market where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, the town that our studio is in, pretty standard 8:30 to 4:30 or 9 to 5 working culture, but definitely not till 5:30. Like that was very rare that someone worked till 5:30 or beyond. And the way that the town was laid out versus where our studio was, it was unlikely we were pulling someone from further than 15 or 20 minutes commutes to us.
Mm-hmm.
So 5:30 was the correct time slot.
They could leave work and get to you.
Yeah. We tested a 6 p.m. and it performed worse because there was that weird lull of like, I'm done work.
Mm-hmm.
I went home. Now I'm too lazy to get back out. So we wanted to come straight from work to us. So that half an hour difference was important.
That's great advice.
When does school start? When do they end? What does daycare look like in your area? When do people work? Like what's culturally normal where you are?
Sure.
Build your
You do
schedule
have to
around
think
that.
about that. Right. I mean, you're building it for your clients and you want to remind owners of that. I find often that owners are building a place for them and it's like, you're not the customer. When do your customers want to come in and let's make it easy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. My sister-in-law is a massage therapist and we talk about this and I find it really fascinating. She has set her own schedule with the company that she works with. And she basically works 9 to 5, Monday to Friday kind of thing. And they're saying, but what about like 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.,
Uh-huh.
Isn't that when everyone would want to go during the week? And
Yes. I mean, it depends.
Depends. Her answer was exactly what you said. She said, yes, it is, but I don't want to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the outlook of today, right? I mean, if you wanted to be busy, you would work evenings and weekends because that's when most people have leisure time to come to have a treatment. But when you're in high demand, you can work whenever you want and people will come. So you get to a point where you can sort of call your own. Or you aren't that interested in being busy all the time either.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think supply and demand is an old school conversation that doesn't happen enough anymore.
Mm-hmm.
COVID re-highlighted this actually in the yoga world a lot. Where
how's that?
There were a lot of studios built through the mid 2000s up to early 2010s that like it could 50, 60, 70, our room fits 70 people in it. I have some places that have 80-person yoga rooms. There was always supply. Like it was unlikely that you weren't going to get into a yoga class.
True.
In places that were that big. So what happened was the price of a monthly membership in the yoga world in 2010 was on average $89 to $99 a month.
Uh-huh.
And in 2020, it was $89 to $99 a month.
Uh-huh.
We're 10 years later and nothing has moved on average. When COVID hit and then there was different allowances in different markets for who was allowed in the room, people started to respect the spot. And what we've seen happen now is most studios didn't have the majority of people pre-booking classes.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Today, everyone pre-books a class.
That's very true. I never pre-booked before. You just went and you went early enough if it was a busy class so you could get your spot. And now, no, I would never risk going and not getting a spot. So I always pre-book. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And going back to your question of how do you start to make the calculation of what money you can make, et cetera, setting your room capacities properly, that's your supply, that's your inventory. So you got 30 spots. It doesn't matter that you could put 2 more in there. Like you want to stick to that 30 because it benefits for you for that to sell out. If someone can't get in now and again, then that shows that they should plan to, they should have membership, they should plan to book, they should plan to participate with you. Like that benefits you as a business. The analogy that I like to use that you've used as well today with the restaurant is if you're hungry and you're walking down the street and there's a restaurant on one side of the road with a lineup out the door and they're like, yeah, it's a 15, 20 minute wait to get in. and there's a restaurant right across the street that's completely empty, which one do you go to?
Isn't it funny? But we're afraid of the one that's empty, right?
You're going to that, you're waiting for that busy one.
Right. We're like, what's wrong with that one? Okay, we're not going there.
Yeah. So supply and demand, having control over that in your business, and not manipulating it, but keeping control so that you are the busy place. That benefits you. That's how you spiral up.
Mm-hmm. Create that FOMO, right? A little bit like, I better sign up and I better get in there. And we've all been retrained since COVID for sure. Do you think that yoga has equaled or surpassed where it was in 2019 in terms of revenue? And yes, you do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I know a lot of studios, of course, had a very hard time and closed, et cetera, but it does seem pretty. I think, don't you also think that people had to be smart about business, and people that weren't, didn't survive, but the people that were smart and looked at the math did, and now they're doing well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a bit of a cleansing that happened in the yoga world through COVID. When everything first shut down, there was maybe an 8 to 10% closure, like permanent closure rate. So it wasn't that high. There's a lot of support. But where we saw a second wave of closure was like last year, 2023 early. So you kind of like have made it through, but now the support's dried up and the business is still a little bit shaky, but also the owners are just burnt out. That's where we saw people throw in the towel. What we see now after that is who's left, like, has got grit and is very serious about the business side of it. And we're also seeing in the public side, renewed enthusiasm about the value of coming to take a yoga class. It's not sort of, I guess, taken for granted.
No, I think many more people see yoga for a regular wellness experience, not necessarily as exercise or just mental, but it crosses many of those items off the list, right? I mean, I know for myself that you don't always want to go to class, but I've never gone to class and said, I'm sorry I did that. That was a mistake. You're always better afterwards. And that, is such great engagement, and you feel so good afterwards, and being part of the community. I think that is an important factor in it.
Yeah. Some of the interesting stats that have been coming out since 2022, even MindBody has published some stuff that they were looking at, but is sort of the reframe of why people are doing a lot of boutique fitness and wellness activities. 2019 in the yoga world, it would have been like physical fitness was in the top 3 reasons. Flexibility was in the top 3 reasons. They're not in the top 3 anymore. It's mental, emotional health, it's personal time, it's escape. And that's a secondary benefit that you get fit as well. Because if you practice yoga all the time, you do get very fit. But that's not why they're going. Versus if I want to get really fit, like I'm going to go to a specific training center that specializes in that, is what we're seeing now. So yeah, it is interesting.
Well, it's great that the yoga business in general has made it through and is going strong. And a lot of it thanks to folks like you for keeping them going. My last question, Josh, is around the expansion of yoga outside popular metro areas. I travel a lot, as you probably do, and I'm always looking for yoga studios when I'm on the road. And in big cities, I can find them quite easily, and big, national franchise brands, but I don't see it much if I'm in Spain or in London. You don't see as much of that, of yoga studios happening. What are your thoughts on how it's arranged around the world at the moment?
Yeah, I think part of that cleansing that I was referring to has been the situation where the idealist yoga studio owner is less prevalent now, where getting the person opening up or sort of self-funding a studio and just accepting that they're like, I'm not doing this for the business at all, and accepting that the business will even struggle just for the lifestyle. We're seeing less of that, which isn't necessarily a negative thing. But the result is in smaller centers, that was the person who was opening the studio. where it's like,
True.
I'm going to make a couple grand a month personally, and I like teaching yoga classes myself, and like, that's good enough. There does seem to be a little bit less of that. And the other thing that we're seeing, both in metro centers and outside of them, is the cost of operation and the cost of entry into a market is much higher than it's been. So it's hard to open a studio in some places, going back to the like few tens of thousands to get a studio up and going, depending on what the lease rate is. We have some studios right now, as an example, that are legacy studios in a market. They've been there for 20 years, 25 years. And their business based off of a multiple of EBITDA is worth a decent amount of money.
What's a decent amount? Like a million, more than millions?
Let's say a 7 figures, $1 million bucks, based off their EBITDA alone, or, you know, high 6 figures. But one studio comes to mind, probably on paper, it's worth 500,000, but the offers they're getting are like $1.2 million, $1.5 million. Because
why do you think that is?
The barrier to
entry.
Yeah, it's not just the brand. The barrier to entry in the market is so high that it would be cheaper to buy them at that price point than to try to open up across the street.
Good point. So this is a good time if you want to own a yoga studio to buy one that's maybe struggling a little bit and then make it your own.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a seller's market or a buyer's market necessarily. It seems to be kind of even, but it's a good time for that type of transaction. We're seeing some good, like positive transactions, people coming in and buying at a discount over what the build out would be, people exiting and getting a fair value. Because there have been some moments in the yoga world where selling a studio is very hard and you got nothing for it, which is frustrating when you've been doing it for 10 years, you know?
For sure. Well, since you brought it up, what multiple of EBITDA are you looking for when you go to sell? What are you seeing out in the market?
My goal from a coaching perspective would be 3.
Okay.
If you can get 3 times, that's a great offer. On average right now, it seems more like they're selling at 2.
Okay.
But that probably skews a little bit low because it depends on who's selling. So
sure.
COVID and right post-COVID, it was more like 1. And that was low. That was very low. The hard part about it is it's only like 1 in 5. It's only 20% of studios that go up for sale that actually ever sell.
What happens to the others?
The owner either sticks it out or they just shut it down. And the just shut it down thing is unfortunate. Sometimes that's just the easiest, best thing to do. There is the occasion where someone can acquire a studio because of the shutdown. In fact, we have someone right now that we're working with that it wasn't actually another yoga studio that closed down. It was a different gym, but the gym built all the facilities and stuff and recently closed, and they're just taking over the lease. That's a good deal, even though the lease is high. Deal.
Yeah, you just walk right in, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is all very insightful and great advice, Josh. I hope our listeners have enjoyed listening to it. You can find Josh at joshbiro.com, joshbiro.com. Again, he is the founder of Yogapreneur Collective and the Ethical Coach. I know, Josh, you just had your big annual event. You have a summit for owners. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that for next year?
Yeah, for sure. We do a business summit every year, usually in November. It's been in Sayulita the last few years down here in Mexico. And basically we plan out the entire next year. So the 2 things that we found are very powerful when you own a business, any wellness business that is escaping your environment for a second so that you can create the physical space necessary to have the mental space necessary to do real planning, because it's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. And we like to say, you know, for every 10 minutes of really good planning and strategy, you save an hour in implementation. So you spend a week doing it, you're ready to go for the next year.
Right.
And then the second part is physically getting other wellness business owners together is always really empowering for people. Just helps you have a wider perspective of what's possible, be able to sounding board with other peers, hear what's working for them, etc.
No, I agree. I mean, I have offered a spa management course live for years, and it's very powerful to be in the room with other people who are experiencing what you're experiencing, because you find that these owners think, oh, it's only me. They don't realize everyone else is having the same issue, and they learn, what did you do about it? And so the collective learning is really valuable.
Yeah, I would add to that this as well, that this year we had a couple of first-time owners give the positive feedback that for them, the most powerful thing was getting to go out and have dinner with us with a couple of other owners who have this like their 5th year in a row coming. And, similar people, similar age, similar families, etc. But the newer owners are like in their first year and they're still thinking about, it'd be cool if I paid myself this amount of money. The other owners in their 11th year and has been working on their business. And they're like, I paid myself triple what I have ever paid myself last year. And just sort of expansion of consciousness around
what's possible.
This is possible, Yeah.
That's great. Well, good for you for doing that and for the yoga world and being a champion of it. And thanks again so much for your time today. It was really great chat. And I look forward to when our paths cross again.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been fun. Talk soon.
Thank you.